In the shadowy corners of American history, a chilling chapter whispers of deceit, ambition, and unmatched horror, a tale that begins with the charismatic yet sinister figure of H. Holmes. You might be wondering, how did a man become the architect of not just buildings, but unfathomable terror? The haunting narrative of Holmes and his infamous murder castle will take you on a journey that questions the very nature of evil. Stick around, because in just a moment, we will unravel a labyrinth of horror and intrigue that you won't soon forget. Herman Webster Mudgett, later known as H. Holmes, was born in 1861 in New Hampshire. From a young age, he displayed an unsettling intellect that foreshadowed his dark paths. But what disciplined this mind towards murder? Picture this, a seemingly ordinary young boy, often bullied, who turned to studying anatomy and medicine, his first foray into the realms of life and death. Here, curiosity morphed into something far more sinister. What ignited the flicker of sadistic fulfillment in a man who once sought to heal? As the young Holmes pursued his medical degree, he learned the intricacies of human anatomy. Yet, instead of healing the sick, Holmes was captivated by the power he could exert over life and death. Once he donned his white coat, he began a path littered with corpses. Indeed, many say it's in medical schools where great doctors are born, but it's also where monsters can sprout from the seeds of knowledge. You'll soon understand how that knowledge transformed into a horrific vendetta against unsuspecting victims. By the time he moved to Chicago in 1886, Holmes was ready to put his malicious plans into action. The city was at the height of the Gilded Age, a time of burgeoning wealth and rapid growth, beckoning new opportunities for those daring enough to seize them. But for Holmes, opportunity did not mean honest labor, it meant leveraging the chaos to construct a harrowing facade, a hotel designed explicitly for the purpose of trapping, torturing, and killing. You may have heard of the infamous murder castle, but what really happened behind its walls? Spanning an entire block, this structure emerged mysteriously from the ashes of the Great Chicago Fire. The building's disorienting design was engineered by Holmes himself, with secret passages, hidden rooms, and soundproof chambers. What could possibly have driven a man to create such a chilling place, designed solely for death? As you imagine its twisted corridors, let the thrilling implications linger. What if there are modern interpretations in today's world that echo this horrifying tale? Every brick of the castle seemed to whisper its dark secrets. Visitors entering the hotel were met with beautiful decor intended to entice and captivate, yet what they could not see were the sinister machinations at work behind the scenes. Victims checking in were often welcomed with false promises and charm. Unbeknownst to them, their disappearance was nothing short of premeditated murder. As they rested in their rooms, did they ever suspect their final moments were upon them? There's a frightening element of trust in this story, isn't there? Countless lives were consumed by the very figure they believed was concerned for their well-being. Yet, how can one person maintain such a facade? The art of manipulation became Holmes's greatest weapon, not just in his dealings with his guests but also with women who found his sophisticated charm irresistible. Here lies another dimension of his monstrous persona, the predator disguised as the perfect gentleman. Have you ever wondered what propelled these women into his grasp? Many were drawn in by romantic enticements, entrusting their lives and fortunes to a man whose motives were as dark as the shadows in his castle. He would propose, charm and entrap them, not just to gain their wealth but to take their lives. The chilling part? For Holmes, it became an exhilarating game of cat and mouse. Yet, the most chilling aspect of the murder castle wasn't merely the gruesome acts perpetrated within its walls. The structure itself was a curious enigma. Open doorways led to dead ends, rooms designed to confound any would-be escapee. Think of it as a macabre funhouse, one that lured in the unsuspecting with the promise of comfort, only to ensnare them in a nightmarish labyrinth. You might even ask yourself, could such design elements reflect the psyche of Holmes himself, a man who reveled in creating puzzles of death? Rumors began to swirl around the murder castle almost as soon as it opened. The disappearances of guests created unease, and whispers of the curious design fostered wild stories. Could that flickering light or shuffling sound in the hallway be something more sinister? For some, the fear of the unknown was palpable. For others, it became a twisted allure. Meanwhile, Holmes maintained the image of a respectable business owner, securing connections within the city and thriving amidst the chaos. In today's society, his ability to navigate both worlds poses an intriguing question. What is the threshold of deceit that allows someone to mask their darkness? Are there remnants of such characters in our modern landscape, and how might they wield their influence? Holmes's castle became an iconic symbol of corruption cloaked in prosperity. The dichotomy of glamour and horror continued to unfold. Add to that the despair of countless missing persons, and you have the perfect storm for media sensationalism. As investigations began, the realization that those who vanished were once hopeful souls searching for a new life made the case all the more heart-wrenching. At this point, revelations of the murder castle began to surface, bringing fear and suspicion into the hearts of many. But before the walls could speak, Holmes proved adept at skirting consequences and weaving a complex web of alibis. He could charm his way out of almost any situation, smoothly navigating the treacherous waters of his facade. As you pause to absorb this chilling tale, consider this. What would you do in the presence of such a predator? Would you sense the darkness lurking beneath his polished exterior? Or would you, too, be drawn into his web of deceit? As the city's unease grew, a fateful decision loomed over Holmes. Would he secure his legacy in infamy, or could he escape the clutches of justice? With every chilling twist emerging from the mystery of the murder castle, the curtain drew closer to the horrific eventuality that awaited. Holmes left a trail of bodies, pleading for justice from behind the walls of his creation. The hidden chambers of that castle would become both a reflection of his madness and an unyielding monument to the horrors of unchecked ambition. As we continue, brace yourself for the shocking conclusion of the twisted journey of H. Holmes. What fate awaited him in the annals of history? How many lives would he claim before the shocking truth could no longer be hidden? What comes next will leave you speechless, but we must first unravel the many layers surrounding the castle itself, the dark, unyielding fortress that transformed lives into anguished memories. Stay with us, as the story reveals further dark intricacies of Holmes's plot and the eventual unraveling of his malevolent empire. It will not only shroud a city in fear but connect you to the echoes of a bygone era, one that reveals how darkness can sometimes be disguised as light. The second half awaits, where all will come to light, a chilling conclusion that promises to be as astonishing as the inception of this ghastly narrative. Just when it seemed Holmes's facade was impenetrable, cracks began to appear in his carefully constructed world. The first significant blow came with the disappearance of one of his former business partners, Benjamin Piddesel, who vanished under circumstances that would eventually raise red flags among those touched by Holmes. Piddesel had once been drawn into Holmes's web of charm, business ambitions, and schemes, but as was often the case, the supply of trust ran thin against the backdrop of greed. Amid the growing whispers of missing individuals and the spiraling rumors surrounding the murder castle, detectives and journalistic sleuths began to piece together the puzzle of low-profile disappearances. Investigations were fragmented, hampered by unyielding loyalty or fear among those who might have spoken. However, once Piddesel's wife approached law enforcement to report her husband missing, it unleashed a torrent of scrutiny upon Holmes that he could no longer evade. Documents and currency records revealed that Holmes had manipulated not only Piddesel but also scores of others, often swindling money through elaborate scams. The network of deceit he wove began to unravel, allowing the authorities to finally target their gaze toward him. But this wouldn't be an easy hunt. Holmes, ever the fugitive, had a singular drive: to escape. Now, one must ponder the chilling implications of how a man could live in a city built on dreams, yet commit such grotesque acts of betrayal without an ounce of remorse. As lawmen started tracing Holmes's steps, he began his own frantic relocation through the country, camouflaging himself beneath multiple aliases and identities, his ability to disappear into the shadows rivaling that of the specters that haunted his murder castle. As speculation continued to grow and the city's paranoia reached fever pitch, the authorities' patience wore thin. They focused their efforts on Holmes's flimsy connections to the notable disappeared, including many women lured into his grip. It was no longer simply the tale of the architect of a horrific hotel. It had evolved into a desperate race to unearth the truth. How many lives had been snuffed out by this man masquerading as a respectable businessman? Amid rising fear, a fortunate break arose when Holmes was apprehended in 1894 in Boston on charges related to a different case entirely. The authorities had initially intended to arrest him on a charge of fraud tied to a small case of a stolen horse. However, upon digging deeper into Holmes's background, they unearthed an incriminating trail leading back to the ghostly corridors of the murder castle. As police apprehended him, they found themselves not just dealing with a fraudster but a living nightmare. The pages of H. Holmes's life were overflowing with horrors that threatened the societal fabric. They bombarded Holmes with questions and led him through a labyrinth of accusations, yet he masterfully twisted his version of events, confounding the investigators with tales of innocence and desperation. But the psychological pressure weighed heavily upon him. The fear of discovery prompted him to jot down confessions that eventually garnered attention. He authored an extensive narrative, almost theatrical in nature, detailing the experiments he conducted and presenting himself as an unconventional monster who believed he was never captured, merely misunderstood. The shocking audacity of someone capable of such heinous acts to attempt to engage empathy is bewildering, is it not? Yet, even in his darkest thoughts, a ghost of miscalculation emerged. The confessions led investigators directly to the discoveries that would cement his legacy. Holmes talked of secret graves, impassable chasms, and equipment designed for pain, which opened the door to a gruesome revelation about the murders that haunted him. As the trial gained momentum, the stories began to weave together. Exhumations of remains expressed silent testimonies that corroborated the sinister confessions. It was as if the very earth had become Holmes's reluctant accomplice, the soil buried secrets that had long cried out for recognition. The stories of the missing floated back into the light, igniting public fury demanding justice for those whose names were now etched in blood. Holmes was tried in 1895, and evidence was introduced that revealed warm offers categorized alongside merciless abandon. The emotional toll stretched far beyond the courtroom. The families of victims were kneeling on shadowy graves, longing for closure while grappling with sordid pain. The courtroom soon transformed into a spectacle of fear and fascination, as curious spectators watched the trial unfold, eager and horrified by the unfolding details. The investigative team honed in on specific patterns in Holmes's actions. They discovered he had not only constructed a vision of death within the murder castle, he'd carefully crafted a career built upon deceit. Over the course of the hearings, the honorable judge outlined the enormity of Holmes's crimes, calling forth witnesses knowledgeable about the victims and painting portraits of those who had trusted him only to face their demise. It became undeniable, the darker truths of human trust placed within the heart of a monster. In his defense, a cunning and theatrical Holmes attempted to portray himself as a misguided genius, an innovator misunderstood by society who dared to venture into realms most feared. But his feigned vulnerability unraveled without mercy. The prosecution was relentless, illuminating the malignant roots of his actions. With a chorus of evidence, tales of horror, and public outcry mounting against him, the jury reached its verdict. In 1896, H. Holmes was sentenced to death, his fate sealed within the very foundation of the societal dark he had constructed. His trial became a reflection, not merely of his monstrous deeds, but of how the vessel of human ambition could distort the line between creation and destruction. While to some, the news of his execution might have signaled closure, to others, it merely opened a new chapter of unease. The story of the murder castle could not simply be erased, it clung to the vestiges of Chicago history like smoke billowing from a dying flame. The structure itself fell prey to time, demolished and replaced by the mundane constructs of everyday life, yet the echoes of its sinister purpose lingered in whispers. What became of the remains of the victims buried in the dark corners of Holmes's designs? Their identities encapsulated within the forgotten web of unease, symbolizing the fragility of trust and the horrifying potential that lies beneath a smile. As the sun set on Holmes's life, darker shadows grew across the landscape. His story became a morbid fascination, a case study on the duality of man, how brilliance and monstrosity could coexist within a single life. The dark allure of evil, when cloaked in the right attire, leaves a mark upon the unsuspecting. However, in every ending, a glimmer of caution emerges. The historical legacy of Holmes serves as a reminder that often the line between the architect of dreams and the bearer of nightmares is razor thin. Should we heed the warning, we might glimpse a learning opportunity, a chance to foster vigilance as we traverse the intricate tapestry of human behavior. Holmes's twisted journey ultimately invites us to question our societal leanings. Are we really able to recognize the darkness hidden in plain sight? The ghost of the murder castle looms long after the bricks have fallen. In a world where trust is essential, may we learn to discern that which glitters isn't always gold. In summation, the spine-chilling saga of H. Holmes encapsulates the complexities of madness entwined with intelligence, greed, and a facade of respectability. Immortalized within the annals of history are the echoes of the souls lost to his cunning. With wonder, dread, and introspection, we finish this journey, a reflection that indeed, in our pursuit of a better future, we must unearth both the shadows and the light, lest we forge our paths blindly, guided only by facades that charm and mislead. Let us walk always with the specter of H. Holmes as a haunting reminder, a guardian of vigilance in how we examine truth veiled beneath the masks we encounter in our daily lives. For only in understanding the depths of darkness can we celebrate the transformation into the light.